notification came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. I remember the exact time because I was still at my desk, finishing a reconciliation report for a client, and my phone lit up with a text from my neighbor across the hall. She just said, "Hey, there are a lot of cars in front of your place. Everything okay?" I lived 40 minutes away. I'd been living 40 minutes away for the past 3 months, staying at my boyfriend's apartment while my condo, the one I bought, the one I put $30,000 down on, the one I painted the kitchen myself at 2 in the morning because I couldn't sleep from excitement, was supposedly sitting empty. Supposedly. I pulled up the smart lock app on my phone. The activity log showed the front door had been opened 11 times since 6 o'clock that evening. 11 times. I sat there in the dark of Marcus's home office and read that number 3 times before it fully landed. Then I opened the thermostat app. Someone had set it to 74 degrees and the humidity control was off. I checked the security camera, the one small exterior camera I had mounted above the front door, the one my brother had made fun of when I installed it, called it paranoid, said I watched too many crime shows, and I saw cars parked bumper to bumper along the entire front of my building. A catering van was double parked. There were string lights hung across my balcony railing. String lights. On my balcony. That I had not hung. That I had not given anyone permission to hang. I closed the laptop. I sat very still for maybe 30 seconds. Then I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, which told me she wasn't inside, or she was somewhere quieter, or she just didn't think before picking up. There was noise in the background. Music. People talking. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, casual as a Tuesday. "Mom," I said, "where are you right now?" A pause. Just a half second, but I've known my mother for 31 years and I know exactly what that half second means. "I'm at Serena's engagement party," she said. "Where is Serena's engagement party being held?" Another pause. Longer this time. "We're just using your place for a few hours," she said. "You're not even there. The space is just sitting empty." "I want to tell you," I screamed. "I want to tell you I lost it completely. Said everything I should have said years ago, all at once, in one clean explosion. But I didn't. I've spent enough time in this family to know that losing it doesn't work. Losing it gets you labeled as unstable. Losing it becomes the story. You become the problem in the story, and the thing they actually did becomes a footnote. So I said very quietly, "How many people are there? It's not a big crowd, it's just, how many people?" She paused again. "Maybe 40? It's Serena's big night, she deserved." I hung up. "Let me tell you about Serena, because you need to understand what I was dealing with before you can understand why what happened next felt so necessary. Serena is my younger sister by 4 years. She is 27 years old and she has never paid a bill in her life. Not because she can't, she works in pharmaceutical sales and she makes good money, but because she has never had to. My parents have been subsidizing Serena's entire existence since she graduated college, and they have been doing it, in part, with money that came from me. I know that sounds dramatic. Let me explain. When I was 24, fresh out of grad school, my dad asked me to be added to his credit card as a backup cardholder for family emergencies. I said okay. I trusted him. I was 24. Over the next 3 years, I started noticing charges on my credit report. Small ones at first. A restaurant charge here, a hotel charge there. I called the number on the statement and it was my dad's card. I figured it was a reporting error. I called the credit card company. They said I was listed as a primary account holder, not a backup. I hadn't been added to his account. A new account had been opened in my name, with my social security number, with my dad listed as the secondary holder. That sentence took me about 6 months to fully process. A new account, in my name, without my signature, without my knowledge. By the time I found it, the balance was just under $11,000. Mostly restaurants, spa days, a 4-night hotel stay in Nashville that coincided exactly with the bachelorette trip my sister had taken with her friends the previous spring. I had not been on that trip. I had not been invited on that trip. I went to my parents. My dad said there must have been a mix-up. My mom said I was making things difficult. My sister said she didn't know anything about it. Nobody apologized. Nobody offered to pay it back. My dad said he would handle it, which meant he called the card company, disputed 2 small charges, and then went quiet. The $11,000 never moved. I paid it off myself. I paid it off because it was in my name and I had just started a new job and I couldn't afford to have a collection account sitting on my credit. I paid it off and I said nothing more about it. I told myself it was over. It was not over. Over the next 2 years I found 2 more accounts. 1 store card, 1 travel card. Combined balance of about $8,000. More restaurants. A furniture delivery charge that I cross-referenced with my sister's Instagram. She had posted a photo of a new couch the same week, tagged it, adulting finally, with a little coffee cup emoji. By the time I bought my condo at 30, I had quietly spent $19,000 cleaning up debt that was not mine, and I had never said a single word to anyone outside of those initial conversations that went nowhere. I bought the condo anyway. I bought it and I set up every single account with 2-factor authentication on a phone number and email address that no one in my family had. I bought it and I set up that exterior camera and I set up the smart lock and I set up the thermostat app and the humidity sensor because I was not going to let them near another thing I built. I just hadn't expected them to physically walk into it. I drove 40 minutes in 27 minutes. I know that's not safe. I'm not recommending it. I parked 2 blocks away and I sat in my car for 4 minutes. I had my laptop bag with me because I'd grabbed it automatically on the way out. Inside that bag was a folder I had been building for 8 months. Every account statement, every cross-reference purchase, every timeline, a letter from a forensic accountant I'd hired quietly the previous spring who had reviewed everything and put her name on a summary document describing what she'd found. I also had the deed to my condo. I had started keeping a copy in my bag 6 weeks earlier, after my mom had made an offhand comment about whether I'd really thought through buying the place alone. I don't know exactly why I started carrying it. Sometimes your gut knows before your brain catches up. I walked to my building. The lobby was fine, quiet, normal. But when I stepped off the elevator on my floor, I could hear music through my front door. I could smell food. There was a small handwritten sign taped to my door that said, Serena and Jonah. Congratulations, with little hand-drawn flowers around it. I stood there and looked at that sign for a long moment. Then I unlocked my door with my phone app, walked in, and the first person I saw was my mother standing in my kitchen, holding a champagne flute, wearing the earrings I had given her for her birthday 2 years ago. "Oh," she said, "you came." Like I was a guest, like I had been invited, like I had shown up at a party rather than walked into my own home. "Yes," I said, "I came." The apartment was full. 40 people, maybe a few more. Catered food on my dining table. Flowers in my kitchen. Actual flower arrangements, the kind that need to be watered, already sweating on my countertop without a tray underneath. String lights on the balcony. A photo booth set up in the corner of my living room, foam board backdrop, props, the whole thing. My furniture had been pushed against the walls and there was a speaker system set up that was not mine, and there were shoes on my freshly refinished hardwood floors. I did not say anything for about 30 seconds. I just looked. Then I took out my phone, opened the smart lock app, and locked the front door. I went to my bedroom, closed that door, and I started making calls. Here is the thing about being a financial analyst. You spend a lot of time thinking about systems, you think about what connects to what. You think about access points and controls and what happens when one control fails and you need the next one in line to catch it. You build redundancies. You document everything because you know that when something goes wrong, the question is never, did something go wrong? It's can you prove what went wrong and to whom? I had been building my redundancy system for 8 months. I called the non-emergency police line first. I told them there were approximately 40 unauthorized people in my condo, that I was the owner of record, that I had not given permission for any gathering, and that I had a copy of the deed on my person. The dispatcher said an officer would come by to do a welfare check and assist with a trespassing situation if needed. Then I called my cousin, Not a family cousin. A friend I call my cousin because we grew up down the street from each other, and she's the only person in my life I've ever trusted completely with any of this. Her name is Danny and she's a paralegal, and when I told her what was happening, she said, "I'm getting in the car," before I finished the sentence. Then I texted Marcus. He said he was already halfway there. I had not asked him to come. He just came. I sat on the edge of my bed and I listened to 40 people in my living room talking and laughing and taking photos in front of a foam board backdrop. And I felt something settle in my chest. Not calm, exactly. More like clarity. The particular clarity you feel when something you have been dreading for a long time is finally, actually happening, and you realize the dread was worse than the reality. My mom knocked on my bedroom door about 10 minutes in. "Sweetheart," she said. "People can see you came in. It looks strange that you're hiding in your room." "I'm not hiding," I said. "I'm waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For the police." A pause. "You didn't," she said. "The lock log shows this door was opened 11 times tonight," I said. "I didn't give anyone a key. I didn't give anyone an access code. I didn't authorize a gathering of any size in this unit. I live here, this is my property." She opened the door. She looked at me with that expression I know so well. The one that says you are being unreasonable while requiring no actual words. She has used that expression on me since I was 9 years old. "Your sister's engagement is once in a lifetime," she said. "So is buying a home," I said. She closed the door. When the officers knocked, my dad answered the door. I still don't know if he thought that would help, or if it was just reflex. He's the kind of man who always answers doors, always stands at the front of things, positions himself as the person in charge of whatever room he's in. The officer asked if the resident was home. My dad said he was family and this was a family gathering. The officer asked again if the resident was home. I came out of the hallway. I had the deed in my hand. I had my ID. I had the smart lock activity log pulled up on my phone, screenshots already saved and emailed to myself. I looked at the officer and I said, "I'm the owner of record. I did not authorize this gathering. I like these people removed from my property." The room went quiet in that specific way. Rooms go quiet when 40 people all stop talking at exactly the same time. It's a strange sound, actually, or the absence of sound, a sudden pressure drop. My dad started to say something about family and reasonable expectations and how I was being dramatic. The officer held up one hand, just slightly, and my dad stopped. "Ma'am," the officer said to me, "do you have documentation of ownership?" I handed him the deed. He looked at it. He looked at the name. He looked at my ID. He looked back at the 50 or so people standing in a condo that was registered to a 31-year-old woman who was standing in the hallway in a work blazer holding a folder. "Sir," he said to my dad, "do you have any documentation showing you have permission to use this property?" My dad looked at my mom. My mom looked at Serena. Serena looked at her fiancé, Jonah, who had, to his credit, been standing near the kitchen looking increasingly uncomfortable for the past 20 minutes. Nobody had any documentation because there was no documentation, because no one had asked me. "She's my daughter," my dad said. "This is a family matter." "Property ownership isn't a family matter," the officer said. "It's a legal matter." I watched my sister's face go through about 6 different expressions in about 4 seconds. The last one was something I hadn't seen from her before. Not anger. Not the usual performed indignation. Something quieter and more real. I think it was the moment she understood that I was not going to be managed this time. The officer gave them 20 minutes to collect their things and leave. 20 minutes is a long time when you're watching 40 people dismantle the decoration of a party in a space that belongs to someone who is standing in the corner watching them do it. The caterer was professional about it. She'd clearly dealt with interrupted events before. She packed everything neatly, thanked me quietly for not making it worse, and left. The photo booth rental company sent someone for their equipment. The guests filed out in clusters, some looking at the floor, a few shooting me looks that I couldn't fully interpret. My mom paused at the door on her way out. "You've really hurt your sister tonight," she said. "I know," I said. She waited, I think, for me to say something more. To soften it or walk it back or frame it differently. I didn't have anything else. She left. My dad stopped beside me for a moment. He looked older than I remember him looking, which sounds like a strange thing to notice in that moment, but it's what I noticed. This didn't have to go this way, he said. No, I said. It really didn't. He left. Serena walked past me without saying anything. Jonas stopped and looked at me and started to say something, and I could tell he was a decent person trying to find something decent to say in a situation that had no decent words available. I felt bad for him. I genuinely did. I'm sorry, he said finally. For what it's worth. It's worth something, I told him. That was true. When everyone was gone, I stood in my apartment and looked at the residue of the party. The furniture pushed against the walls. Champagne rings on my coffee table. A flower arrangement still sweating on my kitchen counter. The slight drag marks on my hardwood from the speaker stands. Danny arrived about 10 minutes after everyone left. She hugged me for a long time without saying anything, which is what I needed. Marcus came 30 minutes after that with Thai food and said even less, which was also what I needed. I didn't cry until about 2 in the morning, sitting on my kitchen floor with Danny next to me eating cold pad see-ew out of a container. Not from sadness exactly. More from exhaustion. The specific kind of exhaustion that comes after something you've been bracing for finally happens and your body finally understands it can stop bracing. In the weeks that followed, I made an appointment with an attorney who specialized in financial fraud. I brought my folder. I brought the forensic accountant's letter. I brought 8 months of documented accounts, cross-reference charges, and a timeline that a CPA had reviewed and signed off on. The attorney looked at everything for about 40 minutes without speaking. Then she looked up and said, "You know this is potentially criminal, right? Not civil. Criminal." I said I knew. She asked if that's what I wanted to pursue. I thought about the $11,000 card, the Nashville hotel, the couch with the coffee cup emoji, the $19,000 I'd quietly paid alone without saying a word to anyone because I was 24 and I was scared, and I thought staying quiet was the same thing as keeping peace. Yes, I said. My dad called me 6 days after the party. He said he wanted to clear the air. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message about how families work things out, about how Serena was going through a stressful time with the engagement, about how I had embarrassed everyone in front of Jonah's family. I saved the voicemail to my email as an audio file and added it to the folder. My mom texted a few times. The text started accusatory and got softer over about 2 weeks, which I recognized as the arc of someone realizing the leverage they thought they had might not exist anymore. I responded to none of them. Serena called once, at midnight. I didn't answer. She didn't leave a message. I want to say something about what people always ask, which is, why didn't you say something sooner? I understand why people ask that. From the outside, looking in, it seems obvious. There's a pattern of harm, you name the pattern, you stop the pattern. Simple. But when the people doing the harm are your parents, the calculus is different. Not because you love them, though that's part of it, but because your entire childhood framework is built on the premise that they are the authorities, that they are the ones who get to define what is normal, what is reasonable, what is a big deal and what isn't. You spend years learning to see through their eyes before you ever develop your own prescription, and by the time you realize the prescription is wrong, you've been wearing it so long you don't fully trust your own vision. The first time I found that credit card account, I genuinely wasn't sure if I was overreacting. I called my mom. She reframed it so quickly, so smoothly, redirected so seamlessly to my tone and my approach, and whether I had considered that my dad was under a lot of pressure. I ended the conversation wondering if I had handled it wrong. That's the thing nobody talks about. It's not just that they did something harmful. It's that they were so good at making me believe the problem was my reaction to it. It took me a very long time to understand that documentation doesn't care about tone. A spreadsheet doesn't care if you raised your voice. A bank statement doesn't care if you handled the conversation gracefully. The numbers are the numbers. The dates are the dates. The signatures are the signatures. That's the thing I held on to those last 8 months. Every time I doubted myself. Every time I thought maybe I was making too big a deal of this, I went back to the spreadsheet. $19,240. Over 7 years. In my name. Without my consent. The numbers are the numbers. The attorney filed the initial complaint 4 weeks after our first meeting. I won't go into all of it here because it's still ongoing and there are things I've been advised not to discuss publicly. What I will say is that the forensic accountant's letter mattered more than anything else in that folder. It was the difference between family dispute and documented financial fraud. One of those things gets dismissed. The other one gets a case number. My dad hired an attorney. My mom called my aunt, and my aunt called me twice, and I didn't answer either time. Serena posted a photo on Instagram from what looked like a winery, with the caption choosing peace and 3 lavender emoji. I don't know if that was directed at me or just a coincidence. I looked at it once and then I muted her account because I genuinely did not have the bandwidth. The thing I think about most, sitting here now on my own couch, in my own apartment, furniture back in its right place, new coffee rings cleaned off, hardwood touched up. The thing I keep coming back to is the moment I handed the officer that deed. Not because of what happened after, but because of what I felt in that second before he took it from my hand. Because I had been carrying that piece of paper, metaphorically, for years. All the documentation, all the patience, all the quiet, grinding work of building a case no one ever asked me to build, that no one knew I was building, that I sometimes thought I would never even need to use. And then here was this moment, completely unplanned. I hadn't chosen this night, hadn't orchestrated it, hadn't set any of it in motion. My family had set it in motion. And I just happened to already be holding the proof. That's the thing about documentation. You do it, and you do it, and you do it, and it feels like nothing, like you're just a person sitting quietly at a desk making spreadsheets about your own life. And then one day the situation arrives and everything you built is just there, already finished, already solid. And you didn't have to scramble, and you didn't have to rely on anyone believing your word against theirs. The numbers are the numbers, the deed is the deed. The officer took it from my hand and read it, and the room went quiet. That silence cost me years of patience and $19,000, and a lot of nights I'd rather not think about. I think it was worth it. People always want to know when I knew it was really over. Not the party. Not that night. I mean the version of me that kept paying for things quietly and saying nothing and telling herself that keeping the peace was the same as being a good daughter. I think it was somewhere around the second credit card. When I found that second account, my name, my social, charges I never made. I remember sitting in my car in a parking garage for about 20 minutes just staring at the statement. And the thing that hit me hardest wasn't the money. It was the realization that I had already known something was wrong for years. I had felt it. I had explained it away, reframed it, given benefit of the doubt I didn't actually have. The document in my hand wasn't a surprise. It was a confirmation of something I had been refusing to see. That refusal cost me $19,000 and about 6 years of second-guessing my own instincts. Here's what I've come to understand since then. There is a version of loyalty that is actually just self-erasure. You tell yourself you're being patient, being gracious, keeping the family together. But what you're really doing is making yourself smaller so that other people don't have to face what they've done. And the longer you do it, the more normal it feels until you can't tell the difference between genuine love and the habit of absorbing harm without complaint. I don't think my parents are evil people. I've thought about that a lot. What they did was wrong. The accounts, the forgery, walking 40 people into a home that wasn't theirs without a single phone call. All of it was genuinely, legally wrong. But I also think they had built a story about our family in which I was a certain kind of character. Reliable. Accommodating. The one who would handle things quietly and move on. They weren't testing me. They weren't scheming. They just kept doing what had always worked before, because I'd never shown them it wouldn't. That's the part that took me a long time to sit with. I was not responsible for what they did, but I was responsible for what I taught them to expect from me. So when I stood in my own hallway that night with the deed in my hand, it wasn't a victory in the way people sometimes imagine. It was just a reckoning that had been building for years, finally arriving at its right moment. I had been building the documentation because I'd learned slowly and painfully that my word alone would never be enough in this family. Not because I wasn't credible, but because credibility requires a baseline of good faith, and good faith had been spent a long time ago. What carried me through was something very simple. I decided to trust what I could verify. Not feelings, not family narratives, not who loved whom and who meant well. Just the numbers, the dates, the names on the accounts, the deed. The lock log with 11 entries on a Tuesday night. Serena still posts on Instagram. My mom still calls my aunt. My dad still, I'm sure, tells a version of this story in which he is reasonable and I am difficult. That's fine. People get to tell their stories however they need to. I just finally decided I get to tell mine too.